Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Joni here and I'm going to show you step by step how to paint this minty winter landscape today. We're going to be working on a 9x12 double primed canvas. I used one coat of white acrylic gesso just to prep it so it's nice and ready to take our first coat of paint. So you're going to need the following colors. And again, a 9x12 canvas is what I'm using, but you can use any size that you like. So I've got turquoise here, black, and some titanium white, and that's it. So you can choose any other colors that you want, of course, but this is what I'm using today. With a number 12 flat brush, a bit of water, I'm just going to take my turquoise paint and start pulling brush strokes diagonally from one corner to the other. And then I'm going to start to come in with a little bit of black and then a little bit of white. So the entire canvas will be covered in all these diagonal lines and brush strokes, side to side, diagonally, and just one color blending into another. But the brightest will be in the center where we're going to have that turquoise and a little bit of white. I'm using a little bit of water here and there as well to help that paint work out of my brush and blend onto the canvas so we get a nice consistency of paint, and it's a thin coat of paint that we're adding now with the water so that we can build up with thicker paint from background to foreground. And so while I'm painting this, I'm just thinking about other color combinations that you could go with, and pink would be a nice one. So you would just choose pink for your main color and then come in with a little bit of white and black. Red or green, blue, purple. You could do this painting a few different times, experimenting in different colors. I've got a few more coming up here on my channel, so if you want to see those, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel and you tap that bell. Tapping the bell will notify you and you won't miss out on any of my brand new upcoming tutorials. Live chats and premieres. I'm going to just quickly finish this up with a little bit more water, black and white, and then I'm going to come in the opposite direction and slide my brush side to side. At this point I didn't know what I wanted to paint, so this is what I've been doing the last 3 to 4 videos, really just sitting down and deciding spur of the moment from one brush stroke to the next, just doing whatever comes to my mind and using my imagination. So these are really fun. These are fresh videos. Nothing's planned out or rehearsed. I like to keep that on my channel. I think that kind of just lets me show you guys how you can be creative on the spot and just use your imagination and go for it. So here I am, just sliding my brush side to side, just moving that paint around and creating a little bit more direction and kind of getting a feel for what I'm going to start to see in this painting, this landscape, where it's going to go. Maybe there's going to be some trees somewhere. I think I'll start in by just starting to pull up here with a little flat brush. I love the flat brush. There's so many brush strokes you can use and apply with it. So you can create an instant forest with it. You can create more sun rays. I'm just going to add a little bit more light in here with that white before I start adding the foreground. So I want to make sure that it's going to dry and have that nice bright glow to it, because once acrylic dries, it will dry a little bit darker, even though it's been prepped and primed with gesso. So I always go back and add a little bit more white if I want to make sure my lighting will show up later on when it's dry. So I just decided right here I'm going to come in, and this was initially first supposed to be just a little path, and then it ended up really quickly changing into a river. So just back and forth, side to side, wiggly little scoops like that. And now it kind of looks like I'm starting to envision a river, a flowing river, and ripples in the water. So I'm going to continue doing that and just kind of wiggling around and having fun, swirling around with my brush. Sometimes I like to work in neat little patterns, and I work in an abstract sort of way before I start to develop a landscape or an actual scene in my paintings. So now it's time to start coming in with some bushes, and I'm going to use my mop brush This is one of my makeup brushes that I like to use. It makes the perfect looking foliage and bushes. Without getting it wet, I just tap to load the brush right in my white. You can use any white that you want, but I'm using titanium white. And I'm going to start tapping softly and gently, kind of side to side, picking my brush up each time in between tapping. So I'm not pulling and blending anything around. I really want to create some texture and a 3D effect with bushes here. So notice how I'm making them really, really small and faint in the background. So only using part of my brush and barely touching. And then I start to use more of my brush and I just tap a little bit harder to bring in the foreground. So these bushes along either side of the river are larger and they're going to have more paint on them. So they're going to stand out and be brighter and thicker. Okay, after just wiping off a little excess paint there off of my brush, I'm going to come in with a very soft first layer. This is just going to be the first initial layer of our trees. So these are the leaves and the treetops on the other side. And then I'm going to come in with some branches and tree trunks. Before I do that though, I'm going to work a little bit here in the foreground. I'm going to start adding some, maybe a staircase, maybe a path leading into a staircase. I like to have a lot of different things going on in my paintings. So like running water or just any kind of water in my paintings is important to me. I also like to have some type of a path or something that kind of takes you on a journey. So a path or staircase. And then bridges are also really fun to incorporate into my landscapes. So I'm adding a bridge right here. So just sliding my brush up over in an arch, and then my staircase, my stairs are just simple lines back and forth, and then they get smaller and smaller to create that perspective so it looks like it's farther away and possibly meets up to where we can cross over that bridge. I'm just going to turn my brush sideways and just scumble around, blending out a little bit of that gray paint on my brush. And then I'm going to work this area around a little bit, just going to blend and brush over it. I'm going to come back in there later on and add some more foliage and then my lamppost, of course. But before I do that, I'll add a little bit of white. I just want to add a layer of snow and lights on the top of this bridge. I thought that would be really, really pretty and kind of whimsical. So I'm just going to have a few different sources of light in this painting. Of course, a little church over here. And you can see I'm using this little Filbert brush. So this is my number, I think this is my number 1. I've also got a number 4 that I'm using. So just choose your brushes according to the size of the object you're painting and the size of canvas you're working on. So I'm just going to add a shadow now under my bridge. I'm going to use black and make this start to look a little bit more 3D instead of 2D. So we'll have our highlights, our midtone. Our midtone is that gray. And then our dark shadows is the black. I'm going to add a little slight reflection down in the water, just pulling and scooping very lightly, not pushing hard at all. I want that to be very, very soft looking. And then I'll add a few little bushes along the side. I'll add a little bit more white. And it's nice to have a little filbert brush like this or a little mop brush for foliage. I'm going to work a little bit on my church here, and I'm going to have it a little bit kind of sloped to give it a bit more character and make it look a little dramatic. So it'll have more of like a scoop shape to the roof line and be more on an angle. I think that will create a little bit of interest. And I'm going to highlight my stairs right now. Of course, just adding a little bit of white over there to make them stand out. I gotta say, these paintings have been so much fun. I think I've been enjoying painting winter scenes more than anything lately, and I've got quite a bit to show you guys, so check out my winter and Christmas themed playlist. But I'm gonna come in now with my number 30 Filbert brush, and I'm gonna add another layer of snow. So just soft and gentle, light little taps. I'm going to go all the way just to my bridge. So I'll tuck my bridge in there and make it look like it's kind of not floating. I want to have it, like it's been there for a long, long time and there's bushes and trees growing around it. So I always kind of tuck my bridges and houses in and cottages in with some foliage. I'm going up now into the trees and adding another layer, a very soft layer, and not pushing hard. I want my trees to be a little see-through, so I really don't want to have heavy looking branches or snow at this point. And then I'm going to take just a little bit of that leftover white paint on my brush and use it to go over my sun streaks or sun rays a little bit. So this could be maybe light coming from the moon as well. I'm not really sure. I don't think about if it's nighttime or daytime. I kind of just go with what's coming to my mind and I try not to make sense of it. Otherwise that takes away the creativity for me. So I always let the viewer decide and make their own little story up about my paintings. So I'm going to go over now and add the little cross and start coming in with my liner brush with more white and slowly, a little bit at a time, add the details to my church here. So again, I don't have any reference photos. I'm working on just from imagination, making this up as I go along. I recommend you guys do that at least once a month. It's really a good exercise for all artists, no matter what stage or level you're at. It doesn't matter how good you are, or if you're a beginner. This is a great exercise for all levels of painters. It's really important and really healthy to use your imagination. We have them for a reason, so it's good to look at reference photos too. That also works a different part of your brain, so try alternating once in a while. And I think that it's really, really fun to work from your imagination. Anyways, that's why I paint like this so much, because I think it's very freeing. There's no rules. You can do what you want. And I like being surprised with what I can come up with without looking at anything. Sometimes it doesn't work out and I end up painting over it, but the process of it is fun. So adding a little bit more white here and there. I'm alternating from my liner brush to my smallest Filbert brush. I'm going to add a bit of gray and black for midtones and shadows and wherever I want to have some darker contrast to make my certain areas pop out a little bit more, like you can see on the bridge. And I'll be adding just a little bit of black here and there on my church, but I don't want to have too much black on it because it is behind the bridge. So anything farther away is not going to stand out as clear as what is in the foreground and what we're seeing closest to us, if that makes sense. So whenever I paint churches or cabins or cottages, I like to have roundish shapes to my windows and my doors. I like arches and circles and swirly looking lines, so I tend to make all of my windows and doors a little bit rounded, but you guys can do whatever you want. I'm going to go back to that because right now I really want to come in and start working on my tree trunks and branches. So I decided to go right into white. I'm not going to add black right now. I may add just a little bit of black at the end for a shadow. And if you want, you can use a longer liner brush. This is just what I've got in my little kitchen studio set up right now. So just a little bit of water, but mostly full on heavy bodied white paint. And again, you can use any kind of paint that you guys want. Don't think that you can't paint along if you don't have the same colors or brands of paints and brushes that I have. Use whatever you have, anything that you've got, just paint. Just use anything to paint because you're learning every time you paint, and don't let anything else hold you back. So just pulling and twirling my brush as I'm dragging it and pulling that white out, that's going to create all those crooked, neat looking branches and tree trunks. So I want to have less pressure on the more delicate little baby branches on the ends. So I'll just use a little bit on the tip of my brush, the least amount of pressure, and then wherever I want to have thicker lines, especially on the tree trunk, I'll just push like really, really gently. Because with a liner brush, you can't really push on it. It doesn't work. It's not effective. But I'm going to use the full width and length of the brush where I want my tree trunk to be a little thicker and some branches as well. I'm gonna add another line here on the bridge so we can see like the wall on one side and the front. And then I will start adding a little bit more definition now to the church. So coming in with more white again, just making my brights brighter and my shadows look a little bit darker by doing this. Maybe add a little staircase there, the base of the door. And then I want to pull out the base of the trees as well, make it look like there's some snow there at the base, and it kind of just softly blends into the ground and disappears and fades away. Right, so I've got a mini mop brush here, and I'm going to tap right into my white and then go into the front of the tree now. So we've got those leaves in the back of the tree and maybe kind of in the middle. And now we're going to start adding layers of leaves here in the front of the tree, if that makes sense. So our trees look more three-dimensional. So make sure you load your brush up each time so you get a nice fresh brush stroke in there, and you get that nice texture looking leaves and treetops. It's really fun using the mop brush for adding foliage, but if you guys don't have a mop brush, you can also use any brush as a stipple or in a stipple way. So you can take a fan brush, you can take a filbert brush and just tap by tapping, you're stippling. So it'll give you, depending on what brush you use, it's all going to change a little bit. It'll look a little different with each brush, but it's going to look like foliage no matter what, as long as you're stippling. I'm going to come down below by just behind the bridge here, above the bridge, and on either side of the church as well, and add a little bit of bushes and just kind of tapping and creating some softer areas. So not having a lot of paint on my brush gives you that kind of soft and fuzzy, blurry kind of a look. Okay, I'm just going to add a few more highlights here on my trees. And you may have noticed that once in a while I'm kind of gently pulling and flicking down. This could make it look a little bit like there's icicles, or it could also give it kind of a look of a weeping willow tree. I'm going to play up on the highlights and the snow in the foreground a little bit more. I have a little bit more control for these ones that are farther away, that are smaller, because I've got this smaller brush to use now. So it's nice to have some areas that are different shades and different tones. So here where I'm adding more white, we've got some really bright highlights and bright snow, and then all the other layers underneath are starting to fade away now. So we've got so many different shades, and it just kind of makes it very monochromatic. Just with that hint of turquoise, I think makes this painting quite beautiful. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to try this, so make sure you guys stay tuned to my channel. I'm going to do a few different, I'm going to do like a whole series of these, experimenting in different colors and seeing which one turns out the best, or which ones my favorites are. One would be, it would be really fun to do one, I think, just in like a sepia, like a really old-fashioned look. So I might do that and use peachy tones with the black and the white. So that's gonna be the hard part for me, is deciding which one to do next. So I'm gonna go over to my liner brush, take a little bit of black, and I think I'm gonna start just adding a little bit more definition here on either side of the bridge. After washing it off, I'm going to take a little bit of white and go over and add a few more little dots and dabs for windows. I know my hand's kind of in the way here, but I am just pulling little lines here, and to make it kind of look like it's pointy on the top of the windows. So bring it in really narrow on the top, and then slightly pull out, curve, and then go down on either side. But this church is far away and it's small, so you're not going to be able to see a ton of detail, but I'm kind of just having fun here. And I tap little lines on either side, going all the way around the door to make it look like possibly some stones or brickwork. And again, just adding little dots and dabs for my windows. I love churches that have lots and lots of windows on them. I'm going to re-highlight my tree now, coming in with another layer of titanium white. Adding a few more branches here and there as well. I want to have some that don't even have any foliage on them, so just some little stray branches here with nothing else on them. And I think this looks, the white looks really pretty against that bit of turquoise and gray. It gives everything a really like dramatic look to it, and just that kind of minty, frosty winter look. But I'm gonna just do little dots here for some lights, maybe some little lanterns along this bridge. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it, spacing it out. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a glow around each of them with one of my smallest Filbert brushes that you saw me using earlier. So I'll just have a few here on the other side too. We can't really see the other side, but on the either end of the bridge we can. So I'll add a couple there. So with a dry Filbert brush, you could use a round brush for this too if you want, you guys. I'm just going to soften and go around and around, making them look hazy. I will come back in with another fresh dot of white in the center of them and just add a little bit of white in the water for some more highlights and reflections. And then back over to my black. I'm going to start creating some little lanterns. So I'm going to start with one here with a little line underneath and then a line down. So a line across and a line down, and then a line on the top. So we'll give it a hat, and then we'll do a line diagonally so it'll get narrower and coming closer to the line on the bottom on each side. And then I'll create just a little triangle on the top of each of the lanterns, painted in black. And then I'm going to add another pair of lanterns. So this one's going to be taller, and it's the same technique, same lines, just bigger. So it's exactly the same, just bigger. And then I'll add a skinny line for a little bit more of a decoration. And then I'll be taking white and painting the light inside white. And I've got quite a lot of lamppost tutorials throughout my playlists. I like painting fantasy quite a bit, so if you guys like that, a sort of a Narnia lamppost type of art, then definitely check out my fantasy playlist tutorial, as well as my winter and Christmas themed tutorials. You'll find lots of lampposts in there. You'll probably find them just about in every one of my playlists, except for my portraits and animals playlist. I don't think, not that I know of anyways, I don't think I have any lampposts in that playlist. But anyways, I'm going to start coming in with the other one, and just like the other one we did, I'm going to try and eyeball it here. Feel free to sketch out first if you want, or measure. I freehand. It's the way I like to approach my art, but there's nothing wrong. Either way is fine. And whatever gets you painting and makes you feel more comfortable, just approach it whatever works for you. So a little white dab inside there for the light. And then I like to add a little bit of white for a highlight on one side of the lamppost going down for the base. It can be a highlight, but it also can be a little bit of snow. And I just want to add a bit of a shadow here off to the right side. So I'm going to loosen up a little bit of that paint and pull in a diagonal direction or line. And I'm just going to work off some of this paint where it got a little bit too thick. So I'm going to push and take some off, and then use some of it to pull off for my shadow. And I'm just using my small Filbert brush for this. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do now is come in with some black and gray for some details around my windows, just to make them look a little bit more 3D and stand out a little bit more, because it's just kind of all white right there. So my hand is unfortunately covering up a little bit of this, but all I'm doing is taking some black and going inside and following those sort of arch-shaped windows, and just a little bit here and there. You'll see in just a moment, but all I'm doing is just really going underneath so it's white on the outside, and then a little bit of gray or black around the inside. I'm also going to add a little bit of black to the roof line on the other side, and just a little bit of shadow and highlights here and there on the church, nothing too detailed. Okay, so I'm going to come in with another layer, taking my 1-inch oval mop brush this time, and I'm just going to go right down here and re-highlight, add another fresh coat of snow down here on these little bushes, and I'm going to kind of go around the edges of the stairs a little bit more, and then pull and sweep with my brush to create a little bit of a snowy looking hill there and a soft highlight. I've got my liner brush here. I'm going to get a little bit of black and white, mostly black, so it's like a dark charcoal gray color, and I'm just going to add a shadow on a few of the branches in that tree trunk there. And then I'm going to balance it out and add another layer of white. So right in here, and even if I don't have any branches there, I'm just going to make some up. So you can always go in and add more branches whenever you want at any time. So all those lampposts weren't enough. I decided I needed to come in and add another lamppost, and you guys will see that pretty soon. I'll be adding that big lamppost that I think really kind of makes a statement in this painting. Before I do that, I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow to the cross to make it look 3D and stand out a little bit more. So pick one side. I'm picking the right side to add a little bit of that gray for a shadow. And then I'm going to add a little bit more white to these little lanterns on over the bridge. So just a little dot of white inside each of them. Okay, I'm just going to wash my brush out, and then I'm going to go in and add just a little bit more, make this part of the tree a little bit thicker. And I'm going to go in with my Filbert brush now, take a little bit of black, and I'm going to start working on the shadows and the beginning stages of my lamppost. I still didn't know I was going to paint a lamppost yet. I knew that I needed something down here, but I didn't know what yet. So I'm just going to come in and add a little bit more shadows on each of these stairs and pull a few more little lines and then make them just a little bit wider so it kind of gradually gets smaller and smaller rather than just really big in the foreground and then really, really small. So that's important when you're trying to create perspective in paintings. So here you can tell I'm just kind of thinking, what should I paint? Should I do it? I'm just going to go for it. So I decide right here, yep, I'm going to put a lamppost here. So I'm going to start with a base, and I like to just kind of add a line at the bottom and then little ovals and different widths. So this can make your lamppost look really decorative and kind of ornate looking. So I'll have a few wider ovals and then some shorter ones, and then I'm just going to pull up gently, gradually making it just a slightly thinner as it gets to the top of where I want to start adding my lamp. So the post here is going to be thicker towards the bottom again and narrower towards the top. So I want to make sure I line it up so that I can still see the other lamp post there behind, and that's also going to help create that perspective because you're seeing a larger lamp post and then you're seeing shorter ones, so that makes you know that there's distance and perspective and that's farther away. So I'm going to start straightening this out a little bit. I'm not overly concerned in my paintings if something's perfectly straight or symmetrical. I tend to have a little bit of a lean and curve in all things in my paintings, and that makes me unique, and that's what I'm known for with my art. I think it adds character, and you don't have to have everything perfectly straight to look good in a painting. It depends what you're painting, though. If you're working on realism, then I guess you really do want to pay attention to measuring things out. But here you can see I'm doing the little triangle top, a little line at the base, and adding those lines that connect from the top, which is wider, and they go down narrower to the base. And then I'm going to come in with my white light in the middle. So we're just going to lightly tap in, clean brush. If you happen to get a little bit of black on there, that's okay. You just go back over the very center. That's where you want the brightest part to be anyways. And just with your white. Now, if you don't have titanium white, any white is going to look really pretty. It's going to change the temperature a bit though. This is a cool white, so you might have a warm white, and that's still going to look really pretty though. If you guys are following along step by step and you want to share your versions from my tutorials, please feel free to join our Facebook group. But just be sure to answer the questions and agree to the rules and terms, and then you can share what you've been working on from my YouTube channel. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. And I'm going to continue along here with my lamppost. You can see I added a line across there, and I just think that's kind of fun. It adds a little bit of decor. I'm just going to go over it, make it a little bit thicker there, so just define these lines a little bit more. I'm going to come in and add another layer of white. As the white sets in and dries, it starts to look a little dull, so I always need to go back in and add another highlight. I'm also going to come around and add a little highlight or a little layer of snow on one side of where it makes sense that the snow or the light would be hitting the lamppost. And then I'm going to take a little bit more of my turquoise. I think I'm going to add a few little touches here and there with my turquoise. I want to mention that I'm using my blue based turquoise today, not my bright aqua green. So I don't use this one very often. I usually like to use my bright aqua green turquoise, but I'm really glad that I decided to use this one. It's a really beautiful color. So you guys can use any turquoise you want, but if you really want to know which one I'm using, that's what I'm using today. So I'm just going to define these lines a little bit more and come in. See how I'm just kind of placing my pinky to help steady my hand so that I can do detailed work wherever I need to. If I need a line to be just a little bit straighter, then you'll notice me just kind of resting my pinky there. Make sure your paint underneath is dry, of course, if you have to do that. And I just added a couple lines in there for the glass work and the iron work on my lamppost. All right, so I'm going to come in now and add those touches of turquoise, just straight full on turquoise now, here and there. Wherever I have a highlight or a little bit of snow, I'm going to go over that with the turquoise. Now, keep in mind, some of the areas here that I'm trying to add it to are still wet underneath. That's okay if it blends in a little bit or picks up a little bit of white or black. But if you really want it to show up, you might have to dry it off first or just use less pressure and more paint on your brush. So I've got like a ball of paint or a scoop of paint on my brush to work with, and I'm really gently dabbing and dragging that on there. With a clean Filbert brush, I'm going to use some of that turquoise white and start coming in with a little bit more layers for foliage. I really want to add a little bit of foliage along the stairs that lead off to that tree in the distance there. So I'll be adding a little bit there in just a moment. And I want to add some more shadows here at the base of my lamppost and kind of work on the snow and foliage down there as well. So here you can see I'm just using really small filbert like before. It helps you have more control, right? You've got to have a few different sizes of brushes in your studio or your collection. It's a good idea. So my smallest is probably a 0 and my largest is a 50, and I've got everything in between, but it's taken years and years to build up and be able to build up quite a collection of brushes. But if you see any sales, be sure to pick them up, and it'll really help you if you have a lot of brushes on hand. So I'm going to add a few more touches here and there of the turquoise before I call this painting done. I'm just adding a little bit of a dry brush along the right side. Now with a really steady hand, as steady as I can be, because I'm kind of a shaky painter, I've got black, a little bit of water, and my liner brush, steadying my pinky there, and I'm going to do some scroll work here on either side to make my lamppost really decorative. And I love this. I wasn't going to do it, and then I decided I'm just going to go for it. This is all about having fun, and I want to have a lot of fun with this series of paintings. So if you want to draw yours out first, go ahead. Mine doesn't even line up, but I don't care. I love how quirky it looks. I love that little bit of whimsy in there. I'm going to finish off with a little bit more black just to tie that all together and clean up my lines a little bit before I call this done. So just a few more little touches here and there, a little bit more turquoise. And I'm really happy with this one. I'm so glad I decided to turn the camera on and film this and share it with you guys. So again, thank you so much for all of your support on my channel. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And thank you to all of my patrons. You know who you are. You guys make it possible for me to keep going and uploading as often as I do, creating content for you guys that I hope inspires you and takes you further as an artist and gets you out of your comfort zone. I want you guys to learn how to be more of the authentic painter that you should be and that you were born to be. So don't ever be afraid to try something new when it comes to your art. I want you guys to take a chance and go for it and get out of your comfort zones. Enjoy the rest of this video and happy painting. I'll see you all very soon next time. Bye.